Hello, my name is Michelle Lewis, and I'm going to be talking to you about the study I did on the effects of parenting styles on children as they grow into adulthood. This study was performed to determine if the authoritative parenting style produced happier children, in turn producing happier adults. The goal was to show a positive correlation between the authoritative parenting style producing happier children. That was one part. The other part was to determine if there was a positive correlation of any other parental style producing unhappy and insecure children. Our childhood experiences shape the way we deal with adult life. Parents use different ways of parenting to raise their children. There have been many opinions on which approach should be taken in order to raise well-balanced children into independent, successful adults. A well-balanced adult was measured by the level of self-esteem and happiness that person had. Self-esteem is a determination of how a person feels about their self-worth or their acceptance of themselves. Happiness is the average satisfaction level a person feels over a specific time period. In this study, I focused on 3 different parenting styles: the authoritative, the authoritarian, and the permissive. The first parenting style that I focused on was the authoritarian parenting style. An authoritarian form of parenting refers to a parent that has complete control over their children with the absence of warmth and nurturing. This style is usually very unapproachable but demanding with their authority. Parents with this parenting style are very adamant about their children being obedient and respectful. Any wavering from this expectation results in harsh punishments. The second style was the authoritative parenting style. This form provides a democratic relationship between the parent and their children. Although they do exercise control over their children, they still allow their children to have some say in decision making. Although the authoritative parent maintains limits and expectations, they are still warm and nurturing to their children. Authoritative parents tend to be more approachable and easier to talk to. The third parenting style is the permissive parenting style. A permissive form of parenting produces a parenting style that is very lenient on their children. They do not require obedience, and they tend to be overly responsive to their children's needs for the sole purpose of not causing any type of friction between them and their children. There is no source of control or punitive system. Therefore, children do not feel the consequences or experience the consequences for their actions. So for this research, I decided to do a simple random sample of 30 LSUA students, both on campus and online. This allowed the samples to be representative of a larger population. The students were sent a link through SurveyMonkey with instructions on how to complete the survey. The questions within the survey came from 3 separate scales. One was called the Parenting Practices Questionnaire, one was called the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale, and the last was called the Subjective Happiness Scale. The Manova analysis as well as the Pearson correlation were both used to show correlation between the different parenting styles and the effects it had on a person's happiness and self-esteem. The first scale was called the Parenting Practices Questionnaire, or PSQ. This questionnaire consisted of 30 questions based on a 5-point scale. Students were asked to complete 2 separate questionnaires, one for their mother and one for their father. The students were to answer the questions in a retrospective view for each parent and how they remember each parent's parenting styles to be. The purpose of this questionnaire was to determine the type of parenting style, whether it was authoritarian, authoritative, or permissive. The second scale was called the Rosenberg Self-Esteem Scale. This was a 10-item Likert scale, and students were asked to answer or assess from strongly agree to strongly disagree in order to measure students' self-esteem. The third scale was called the Subjective Happiness Scale. This scale was a 4-item measure of happiness. For 2 of the items, participants were asked to characterize how they related to peers. The remaining 2 items on the scale, participants were asked to compare their happiness and unhappiness to a brief description provided on the scale. When it came to evaluating the happiness from the mother's parenting style, it showed that the authoritative mother to have a positive correlation with happiness in the student. The authoritarian mother, however, showed to have a lesser effect on happiness, and the permissive mother showed to have the least positive effect on happiness. The father's parenting style regarding the happiness, the authoritative father showed to have the highest positive correlation with happiness in the students. The authoritarian father showed to have a lesser effect on happiness, whereas the permissive father showed to have the least positive effect on happiness. With self-esteem and the mother's parenting style, the authoritative mother showed to have more incidences of positive correlations with higher self-esteem in the students. The authoritarian mother showed to have a lesser effect on self-esteem, and the permissive mother showed to have the least positive effect on self-esteem. In fact, it had a negative correlation to self-esteem. Self-esteem with the father's parenting style showed that the authoritative father had the highest positive correlation with self-esteem in the students. The authoritarian father showed to have lesser effect on self-esteem, whereas the permissive father showed to have the least positive effect on self-esteem. This study illustrated the correlations between parenting styles and how they affect happiness and self-esteem. More specifically, the study demonstrated that the authoritative parenting style resulted in happier people with higher self-esteem. This study also demonstrated that the remaining parenting styles did not produce the happiest people with the highest self-esteem. The goal was to use the results from the study to help educate parents on the best parenting style implemented when raising their children. Thank you.